In this particular recording, I wanted to speak with you about conspiracies and incitement, in particular Chapter 4. Conspiracy can be difficult to understand, and it is really important to understand when you're dealing with the prosecution of terrorism. You'll also, if any of you get involved in federal law enforcement or state and local law enforcement and you work drug investigations, a lot of times conspiracy is one of the statutes, one of the crimes that you'll charge the individuals involved in that particular crime with. I used it quite a bit when I was an agent, and so it's important to understand how it works. One of the key decisions that we talk about, that they talk about in the textbook, is the Pinkerton versus United States decision. And what's critical about that, that a person, number one, it shows that conspiracy is an offense separate in of itself. So if you have individuals involved in a conspiracy to explode a device, a terrorist attack, say, in a major city, in addition to the murder of the planned murder of American citizens, in addition to having possession of a dangerous weapon or an explosive device, they can also be charged with conspiracy, which is it's a substantive crime that is separate and of itself. So that's important to understand. Conspiracy itself is a separate crime itself. And one of the most other important things that came out of the Pinkerton decision was the fact that a person may be convicted of a conspiracy without knowing the details of what others are planning to do. And so let's talk about that for a second. What I'd like you to do is get out a piece of paper, and we're going to talk about the basic wheel conspiracy, and I'm going to explain it to you. And if you go along with me in doing this, it'll help you further understand exactly how this works. So let me give you a second to get a piece of paper and get a pencil. Okay. Now what I want you to do is we're just going to make a drawing of what would be your typical wheel conspiracy. Draw a circle on your page, like a bicycle wheel, and in the center, just put the name John. And in this particular case that we're going to talk about, that we're going to write down here, is John is he's the mastermind of this particular, we'll use a terrorism scenario. He's the mastermind of the attack. He's the organizer. Just like Ramzi Youssef was the organizer, the mastermind, in the first World Trade Center attack. So we've got John in the center, and John needs several individuals to help him if he's going to carry out this successful attack. So one of the individuals could be responsible for financing. He's going to ensure that funding is funneled to the organization, and that'll be his job. It could be financing of cash, getting individuals a place to stay, all those things that go with the financing of that particular attack for this cell. Let's say it's a terrorist cell. You could have another individual that's going to be charged with recruitment. He would be responsible for finding the actual individual or individuals that'll carry out the attack. Let's say for this attack they're going to use small arms and also explosive devices, which we see a lot of times in some of the attacks overseas. Now we have another individual. Maybe he's in charge of obtaining the bomb materials. Maybe it's a fertilizer bomb, and he goes out and he sets up whatever needs to be done to get the materials together. And then we have another individual, and he would be the bomber. So as you take your sheet of paper, I want you to write the recruiter, the financier, the bomb materials, the bomb maker, and if they're going to use small arm fires, you'd also have somebody in charge of weapons. And so write those on the outside of the circle, and then draw a spoke or a line into the center to John. And this is what you get in your basically wheel conspiracy. You've got a wheel, you've got a center who's the planner, and then you have the different individuals that have roles that they play within that conspiracy. Now here's the kicker, and this is the important part. the bomber, the individual that's actually going to construct the bomb, he might not even know who the financier is. He might not know who the recruiter is. He might not know who the individual is for the weapons. You could also have somebody in charge of training. He might not know these individuals, but the one thing that connects them all is John, number one, and number two, it's the plan, and the plan is to carry out a terrorist attack. So even though they have a separate role, they are all together part of this conspiracy to carry out this attack. And this is what is important, because for the courts have ruled that for a conspiracy to be successfully prosecuted, there has to be a rim around the wheel. So what you have at first is you had John in the center, you had the spokes going out, and then the rim around this wheel, or the circle around John, which connects him to all these other individuals, that becomes the rim. And the rim is the plan. And the plan here is to carry out a terrorist attack. Now, one of the advantages, is pretty obvious, to individuals not knowing each other is if one of them gets caught, he can't identify who the other people are. And let's say if it's foreign terrorists that come into this country to carry out an attack, like they did with the World Trade Center 1 bombing, if an individual does get picked up and John gets wind of it, and this individual doesn't know who the other people are, it gives them a chance to get out of the country and escape before they get arrested. Another thing where this is important, we would call it operational security. If you have a group of cells within an organization, a terrorist organization, you have cell 1, 2, 3, and 4. These cells may be working together but independently on carrying out terrorist attacks against the nation. But they don't know who the others are. They don't know who the other individuals are, nor what they're doing. And that's fine, because if one of them gets compromised, then they maintain security. The others are not going to be, their identities won't be revealed because these individuals do not know who they are to start with. So this is something terrorist organizations do. They're smart enough to do that as they have evolved into more individual cell-like structures. The other type of conspiracy that they talk about in the textbook is a chain conspiracy. So pretty easy to draw links in a chain. So just take a piece of paper and draw a straight line down, and you can draw the individual links separating each other. And probably the easiest example I can give you would be a drug operation. Let's say, for example, the top link, you have the individual maybe in Colombia, where they're involved in the growing of the coca leaves and the conversion of those leaves to cocaine. All right, and they're all part of an organization that is distributing. Their goal is to distribute cocaine, let's say from Colombia into the United States or Europe or wherever they're going. Maybe the next individual down the chain would be your shipper. And this individual, his job is to pick up the cocaine in Colombia and fly it, let's say, to Miami. Now in Miami you have your individual that's involved in the, let's say he's the wholesaler, and he gets the major wholesale shipment in from the pilot that flew it in, and his job is to distribute it to let's say the United States. So let's say it comes into Miami, and he's got his distributors in the various big cities, New York, Atlanta, wherever, and he ships it. He has somebody that actually drives it up to Atlanta, say. And then when it gets to Atlanta, it gets parceled out to the local distributors there. So up the chain, we started with the grower and the lab in Colombia, the shipper who flew it from Colombia down to Miami, the wholesaler in Miami, and then this distributions out to retail distributors in the various major cities. These are up and down a chain, but the one thing that links them all, even though they don't know each other, is the plan. And the plan, the overall plan, is to distribute cocaine to American citizens or drug users. So that's how a chain distribution would work using a drug cartel as an example. In summary, there's three real key issues that have come up and courts have made decisions on. That a conspiracy conviction against one person can stand without knowing who the other conspirators are. This conspiracy itself need not have specific targets in mind. In other words, in the terrorism wheel conspiracy we talked about, the bomber might not really know what they're going to blow up. He just knows they're going to blow something up. So he doesn't have to know the targets to still be convicted of conspiracy. The main thing they all have to agree to is the essential nature of the plan. That, yeah, we're a terrorist. I'm a terrorist bomber. I'm going to create bombs for John, and I know that John's going to use them to attack Americans. That's simple. Al-Qaeda made it pretty easy for Americans with conspiracy cases when they declared war against the United States, what they call jihad against the United States. So anybody that's a member of Al-Qaeda knows that one of their ultimate goals or plans is to carry out jihad against the United States. So that's pretty easy. If you can arrest an individual who's a member of Al-Qaeda, it makes it much easier to show that there is a plan and to achieve a conviction. Another key element of conspiracy cases, there needs to be an overt act. An overt act would be, if we go back to our wheel example, the actual, let's say, going out and purchasing the bomb-making materials or the construction of the bomb. Or even maybe you had an individual who was a surveillance team member and he actually goes out and does surveillance as they select the target. Those are overt acts by somebody within the conspiracy. You have to have at least one to successfully prosecute a conspiracy case. Obviously, in our chain model, the actual growing of the cocaine, the coca leaves, converting it into cocaine, and then shipping it, those are multiple overt acts that support the overall plan. So, but there has to be, they can't just have people talking about doing something. There's got to be some sort of overt act in furtherance of the conspiracy to be able to charge the statute. As you read the text, you'll see some interesting cases that come up. The World Trade Center 1 bombing, and they talk about the conspiracy that was involved there. It's pretty, based on what we just talked about, it's pretty easy now. Hopefully it'll make more sense to you as to how the conspirators, put their plan together and how they carry out a terrorist conspiracy or a criminal conspiracy. Like I said earlier, there are several cases that you can read about, and they talk about some of the things that I've already discussed here that are very interesting cases. Again, our ultimate goal as prosecutors and as criminal investigators is to stop attacks from occurring. So that's why conspiracy charges are so important. If you can disrupt an organization that's planning an attack and still have a statute that you can rely on to prosecute them, that's where conspiracy comes in, because our ultimate goal is to prevent the attack from occurring in the first place. So that's why a lot of times you'll see where the FBI or whatever organizations work in the case, they'll let things go for a certain amount of time, but there also comes a time, they talk about it in our textbook as imminent. How imminent is imminent? There's a time when you have to make a decision, hey, we've got to arrest these people now because they're getting to the point where they're getting close to carrying out the attack, and that's what we don't want to occur. Another interesting crime talked about in the textbook is treason. Now, this is actually codified in the Constitution under Article 3, and you can read that. And of course, treason is levying war against the United States, or providing aid and comfort to the enemy. It's an interesting statute. It's rarely used. There's a couple of examples in the book. It's punishable by death, And one important thing to remember is only Americans can be charged with treason. If you're a foreigner, an alien, you can't be charged with treason, levying war against the United States as an American citizen, because this particular statute is designed for Americans. Now we'll find plenty of other statutes that we can charge against these individuals, but again, treason itself is an American. It was designed to punish Americans that turn against their country. That's all I have for this particular chapter. The rest of it's pretty self-explanatory, but I did want to go over the conspiracy law because it is a very important tool for the United States in targeting terrorism and major drug investigations and other crimes. And I charged conspiracy cases in major fraud cases that I worked as well. And so there's a lot of different variables you can use for it. It's a powerful tool for government. That'll end this recording.